Hi, I'm Chenzo, and this is Decoy Studios in sunny Suffolk. Decoy has evolved over the last 15 years to become, it's now a retreat for artists and writers to come and stay in a different environment to what they're probably used to. Got 30 acres, very relaxed. We have 7 bedrooms. It's a beautiful spot for people to come and work. We have a gym and a wellness center for people to continue with their routines. We specialize in vintage equipment. This is a 1971 Neve console made in Cambridge, around the corner. We have a lot of esoteric American equipment, which was predominantly 60s, 50s, 60s and 70s. We're finding that people are starting to come back to use professional recording studios, which are acoustically treated, probably because they're bored of working in their bedrooms and have had enough of working in their garage or whatever, and just want somewhere to go to work and to relax. And you can definitely feel the energy here when people come in to record here. You feel like they're stepping up and they're stepping their game up, and it's an event for them, and they're here for a purpose. And I think that always helps the creative flow. Digital can replicate tape to a certain extent. The thing which is contentious is tape wasn't perfect, which is what people liked about it, but it was also very limiting. So now the thinking is to use a mixture of the old analog and the state-of-the-art digital to make the workflow faster than just working with tape, but also being able to capture the sound of tape, or what people believe is the sound of tape. Having gone through and learned how to work with tape, because that's all we had when I first started in the late 80s, the advent of digital was fantastic for us because it liberated us from all sorts of limitations that the tape would give us, such as tape count and the amount of tracks we could use. The length of tape, it only lasts 16 minutes, so you were quite limited. But I think there's a balance to be had between digital and analog, and I feel sometimes people kind of glorify in their own minds how great tape sounded, which it does sound very good, but sometimes a bit like driving an old car, you've got to be into the pain that it can cause, and you don't have the creature comforts that you would in a modern car. So it's very similar. The studios used to be a place that people would go to, having rehearsed, knowing exactly what they were going to do, and go and record as fast as possible and then leave. One of the reasons studios used to be insanely expensive. In the late 80s, a studio could cost you £1,500 a day, which if you scale that up, I don't know what the figures are, but it's a lot of money. People then started to try and free themselves from that and record in houses, and they rent houses in the south of France. Famously, Elton John, Stones, Zeppelin used to record in houses. So it gave them more freedom and more time to spend on their record. Then with the advent of digital and laptops, people were staying away from studios and recording in bedrooms and garages. But there is definitely a move back to that, to using things like this. And it does teach people how to record and limits them, which is a good thing sometimes, because if you have unlimited resources and unlimited tracks, you can disappear very quickly. It's much harder to break into the industry now. I think venues are slowly coming back. There's a few in it which have sprung up again and opened up. And there is a move to have more live music, which would help younger artists enormously. I think there are very few artists that refuse to use the major streaming platform, simply because then they just wouldn't get the income. And seeing as the income is so much smaller now, the percentage that the artist receives is so much smaller than it was even in the 90s or in the early 2000s, that they have to use the streaming platforms because that is their only stream of income apart from live, which is now coming back in a big way, big shows. But I don't think there's enough choice, really. And bands do need to use labels purely for marketing and for exposure, and to use the resources that major record companies can give them to try and make a living out of it, which is increasingly difficult. If you're a music lover, then you'd want to support anything that helps young artists emerge, and young artists to help them either learn to play instruments or learn to play in a band, or how can I put it, to hone their craft, really. So yes, I think supporting whatever festivals, venues you can, and charities that help grassroots artists and schools, and to help them, expose them to music and expose them to what can be achieved. Bands don't really ask for equipment. It was a conscious decision to go down that road. When I was sort of coming up in the 90s and early 2000s, the studios that I worked in were major studios, mainly in London, and generally they didn't have any equipment. They would have a piano, maybe a Hammond organ. But very rarely would they have amplifiers or drums or keyboards up for the piano. And I found that independent artists or young artists, smaller artists, didn't really have the budget to buy good equipment. So the equipment that they would come in when I first started working with young bands was not the best. And I'm not suggesting you have to have the most expensive equipment. It's just in terms of how it's maintained and whatever. So when artists come here and they see the collection of amplifiers we've got, or drums, or definitely, and they get enthused by it, and they try the instruments and try the amplifiers or whatever, and it just, you can just see that they're interested in it, and they have fun doing it, and they'll find different sounds, and generally, hopefully, they work. With vintage equipment, sometimes it doesn't behave properly, but most of the time it's easy to fix, and we can find people to fix it fairly quickly. There will be there are obviously certain people who love that genre of equipment and love the sound and love how tactile it is and how they can interact with it. And there are people who have no interest in it whatsoever and make amazing music with a laptop. And I think it's horses for courses. You'll find someone who prefer to have a brand new 911. There'll be someone who prefer to have a 1993 993. So, and the same with Ferraris. There'll be the Dino Lover or the 986 Lover or whatever they're called now. Lost track of them completely. There's so many of them. I think the nicest thing that anyone can ever say to us about coming here is that they like the people. I think that's the most important thing. You can have all the money in the world and buy the most expensive equipment, vintage or new or whatever. But if you don't have the team and the people who are the interface with the clients and the artist, then you don't really have anything. So it is, I'd say 80-90% of it is the people who our artists have to be around when they're here. That's most of it for me.